You are listening to Part 18 of our 24-part series, Marvelous Mints, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Wade at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Thank you, Gemini. I'm so enjoying getting into peppermint and spearmint, especially because I bet that many people are saying, well, it took you long enough. Here we are, 18 weeks into a whole thing about the mint family, and finally you're going to talk about mint. Well, you know, I like to leave some of the best things for last. And certainly, when it comes to some of the best things, peppermint is one of the best things going. You know, often when I'm visiting a strange place, I say, what do tourists here like to do? And people look at me like I'm kind of crazy. And I say, well, you know, the reason that things are tourist destinations is because usually they're very interesting. And we said last week that if somebody says they have an herb garden, they probably have peppermint or spearmint growing there. And it's kind of like that tourist destination. There's a reason that everybody wants to grow peppermint or spearmint. And it's not just that they taste real good and they smell real good, but they work real good too. Peppermint, in fact, is among the world's most popular flavorings, and that is worldwide. It's not just here. It is, in fact, the world's most extensively used essential oil. Now, this is from a pretty new book that was published in the past 15 years, but I do remember at a time slightly prior to when this book was published that at an herb conference we were playing herb trivia. And one of the questions was, what is the most widely used essential oil? And I did indeed guess peppermint oil, and the answer was oil of orange. And you know, when you think about it, if you go into a public or a commercial bathroom, very often you will smell essential oil of orange being allowed to vaporize through that. And so I think that's where orange gets the upper hand over the peppermint there. Peppermint and Japanese mint, the true peppermint, Mentha piperata, and Japanese mint, Mentha arvensis, are the richest natural sources of menthol known. And although, as we said, the mints have been highly valued for thousands and thousands of years, they were mostly valued because they smelled good, as we said. Western medicine started really embracing mint as a medicinal herb in the early 1700s, and it has been a full tilt boogie ever since. I had bookmarked an article that just came through the American Botanical Council about some new research that's being done with peppermint, but unfortunately my computer ate the article and I couldn't find it this past week when I was looking for it. But if you are interested in up-to-the-minute research on peppermint, you can find plenty of it out there. From the time when Western scientists and doctors started saying, peppermint, until today, there's simply been more and more, better and better stuff about peppermint and how truly miraculous it can be, especially for people with irritable bowel syndrome and major digestive issues. References to mint appear all over the place, but true peppermint did not appear on the scene until 1696. A strongly aromatic plant that was the natural hybrid of spearmint, Mentha spicata, and watermint, Mentha aquatica, was discovered in an English field and cultivated. By 1721, in other words, about 25 years later, peppermint had its own name and was now included in the London Pharmacopoeia. It was prescribed for indigestion, flatulence, that's gas, colic, nervous headaches, fevers, colds, and a variety of other ailments. In American folk medicine, peppermint was used very similarly: indigestion, flatulence, heartburn, to stop nausea, to stop vomiting, to cure hiccups, relief of headache, and as something that would induce sleep, which seemed very strange to me because I tend to think of peppermint as more stimulating. In modern herbal medicine, peppermint is used to relieve indigestion. Aren't we surprised? So from its earliest beginnings, right all the way through, people have been saying a cup of peppermint tea after dinner, that sets me up and makes me feel really good. Modern herbalists also think of peppermint when it comes to bloating, which is perhaps the term that we are more likely to use than flatulence. All right, flatulence actually means to let gas, and modern-day people try not to do that, so instead we get bloated. Modern-day herbalists also think of peppermint when there are any kind of spastic complaints in the gastrointestinal tract. In other words, when somebody says, oh, I have pain in my gut, or oh, I have pain in my stomach, and they usually mean their gut, then your modern-day herbalist is probably going to think first of peppermint, and more MDs are thinking first of peppermint too. But not just for the intestines, small intestine and large intestine and the stomach, but also for the gallbladder and for the bile ducts. So anyone who's complaining of gallbladder pain, who has pain after eating a fatty meal, that cup of peppermint tea, again, is just the right thing. And as I mentioned, a growing amount of evidence is showing that capsules of peppermint oil are practically a miracle cure for people dealing with irritable bowel syndrome, something very, very difficult, both for the person dealing with it and for the healthcare practitioner trying to help them in dealing with it. Modern-day herbalists also think of mint when they want to relieve tension headaches, to reduce muscle spasms, and to alleviate nerve and muscle pain. So again, these are harking back to some of the very earliest uses of mint, applied as a poultice, applied externally to relieve muscle aches and drunk freely as well. It is the menthol in peppermint that is primarily responsible for its beneficial effects. Menthol is an antispasmodic. It inhibits smooth muscle contraction in the digestive tract. That means that if the intestines are cramping, if they're having spasms, then either of the mints, either peppermint or spearmint or any of the other plants in the genus Mentha, are going to slow down and inhibit the contractions of the muscles in the digestive system, letting the digestive system take a deep breath and rest. Menthol also stimulates production of bile. When you put these two actions together, what you have is a calm digestive system and one that can function at its peak. Peppermint relaxes the muscles of the esophageal sphincter at the top of the stomach. And thus it helps to release trapped air, reducing stomach bloating and belching. But you may have already said, wait. If it relaxes the muscles at the esophagus, or the esophagus goes into the stomach, couldn't that increase heartburn? Well, it may. Peppermint can increase the symptoms of heartburn and indigestion in people with gastroesophageal reflux disease, also known as GERD. And so what they tend to do when they are doing studies on peppermint is not to give people peppermint tea to drink, but to put peppermint oil in a capsule and then enteric coat it, which means they put a coating on it that prevents it from coming open until it's passed through the stomach. And that way the peppermint can't get up into the esophagus and can't relax those muscles there. In one study comparing enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules to a placebo in people with irritable bowel syndrome, 3/4 of the subjects who received the peppermint oil said that their symptoms were reduced or eliminated. That, if you have ever talked to anybody with irritable bowel syndrome or tried to help anybody with that, that is, as I said before, practically miraculous that many people experience relief from using peppermint oil. I would, of course, first start with peppermint tea, not infusion. We don't want to make infusion from any of the mints. They're just too strong in oils. But a nice cup of peppermint tea, I would have the person try it hot. I would have them try it cold. I would have to try them by the sip. If peppermint tea didn't seem to work for the person, I might have them try out eating peppermint jelly or making peppermint vinegar and stirring a little peppermint vinegar into some water or using it as a salad dressing and seeing if that would work. And if we wanted something a little bit more concentrated, then we could make a mint honey. Fresh peppermint or fresh spearmint leaves with honey poured over it and allowed to sit until the leaves actually crystallize and become really imbued with honey. And then a teaspoon of that used in a cup of boiling hot water to make a mint tea. Only if none of those ways of administering the mint to the person worked, or only if those ways, all of them, made the person feel that their symptoms were worse or that they were getting GERD or heartburn from it, only then would I consider actually going to the enteric-coated capsules. In general, I'm quite unhappy with taking any kind of herbal remedy in a capsule. In general, I'm very unhappy about using essential oils. I don't think that they're good long-term care for people, although certainly they have their short-term uses. So we can see that I'm being pushed on two things I don't like here, to be talking about enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules. And yet it wouldn't be fair not to talk about it because of the just thousands and thousands of people who have volunteered to be in studies and who have reported phenomenal success in using this. In another study, 80% of the people receiving the enteric-coated peppermint oil experienced relief in part or in total from their irritable bowel syndrome. In the laboratory, menthol and peppermint oil is active against a wide variety of bacteria and even some viruses, including herpes and West Nile virus. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Have a herpes outbreak, say, maybe I will sit in a cup of mint tea. Better make that a tub of mint tea. But who knows? What an interesting thing to think of mint as antiviral. Research has shown that peppermint applied to the forehead and temples is as effective as relieving headaches as over-the-counter painkillers. That's great, isn't it? Now, of course, you could use peppermint oil, you could use menthol, but my preference, again, would be to keep, if you have headaches, to keep some mint infusion in the refrigerator, a full ounce of dried mint in a quart jar filled to the top with boiling water, allowed to steep. And then once it got to room temperature, I would just stick it in the refrigerator and leave it there. Because it's antibacterial, that infusion is going to stay good for 4 to 6 weeks at least, and sometimes longer. And so then you'll have it. One of my favorite ways of suggesting that people use mint if they have a headache is to pour that mint infusion on some light piece of material, which you can then damply lay across the forehead from temple to temple. And some women who have very severe headaches say, even better if you pour that mint infusion on like a kitchen towel and fold it in half the long way so that not only does it cover the forehead and the temples, but it also covers your eyes. That seems to be very, very effective. Mint has become the symbol for purity and hospitality. The gods Zeus and Hermes, disguised as wanderers, were journeying through the countryside of Phrygia. They knocked at house after house after house, asking for food and a place to rest, but they were refused. Finally, they came upon the poor hut of an old couple with few resources. Yet here, Zeus and Hermes were warmly welcomed and served food on a table that had been freshly scrubbed with mint leaves. When the gods revealed themselves, they rewarded the couple for their unselfish kindness by turning their humble home into a beautiful temple and ensuring that they would always be together like the many, many stalks of mint. And thus mint worldwide is a symbol of hospitality. The first time I was in the old city of Jerusalem, and this was quite a shocking place for me to be, having never been in a place where there were so many people and so crowded together, and not just people crowded together, but motorcycles and donkeys as well. Very narrow alleys, cars could not get in to the old city of Jerusalem, and everywhere the smell of mint tea, everywhere the smell of hot mint tea, everywhere people walking, carrying above their heads, on their fingertips, round trays with glasses of mint tea going here, mint tea going there, mint tea going everywhere. And so I wanted some mint. Who wouldn't? I wasn't so sure I wanted the mint tea itself. I was still a little nervous about actually, allowing those kinds of things directly into me. But I thought, there is so much mint tea. Surely there is mint for sale here. And I walked up one alley and down another, looking and looking and looking for mint. And finally, I got exhausted. And I said, I am just going to stand here and rest. And I leaned up against an old stone wall in the shade away from the hot beating sun in the old city of Jerusalem. And as I laid my cheek against the cool stones, I noticed that I was smelling the smell of mint. And when I looked, there was an old woman sitting right at the corner where I had chosen to rest. And surrounding her were great heaps of beautiful peppermint. And I had found my mint. Isn't it wonderful when our noses tell us just what it is that we need to know and take us to the very place that we need to be taken to? A rather serious herb book tells us that peppermint has a great number of indications and uses throughout the human body. First of all, it lifts mental lethargy. It removes brain fog, and is very useful for people who are feeling anxious. What an easy thing to do for someone who's anxious, to offer them a cup of mint tea. Fungal infections, as well as muscle aches, seem to be cured by the external application of fresh mint leaves or a wash made from very, very strong mint brew. Like everything in the mint family, but especially the mentha genus, think of them when there are problems in the lungs, when there's a cold, bronchitis, the flu, sneezing. I would even say that peppermint can be very helpful for people with pollen allergies. When the pollen seems to kind of shut down the lungs, or certain kinds of asthma, I think especially of like exercise-induced asthma, but mint opens up the breathing apparatus in these kinds of situations and really gets that person to breathing well again. Mint can be used to help relieve angina pain and dysmenorrhea. So again, we want to think about mint as being a pain reliever. We talked about some specific mints that were specific pain relievers. But coming back to the mentha genus, again, we want to say again, yes, mints relieve a great deal of pain everywhere in the body, but especially in the digestive system. Use mint if there's nausea, if there's vomiting, if there is indigestion, halitosis, if there is spasmodic flatulence, if there is inflammation or pain anywhere in the digestive system, including the liver and the gallbladder. The government of Germany, where herbs are legal, has set a commission called the Commission E. And Commission E has said that peppermint is therapeutically valuable in the treatment of indigestion, irritable bowel syndrome, colds and coughs, muscle ache, and tension headache. Studies show that peppermint is equal or superior to any conventional or drug treatment for indigestion. Have you ever used any kind of mint for indigestion, Gemini?
Yes, I've used peppermint. That's usually my go-to herb for that.
Do you find that it works pretty quickly?
I do. I've been really pleasantly surprised how quickly it works.
Yes, most people are very surprised. They think, oh, yeah, well, I'll drink this cup of peppermint tea, and maybe in a day or two I'll feel better. Right, but in fact, it can often take effect within a few minutes.
Yes, I was going to say, usually like 20 minutes or so.
Yeah. And you think, well, gee, how did it even get into my system that fast? Well, it has to do with the menthol, right?
Yes, probably.
Right, and you think about it, when you drink that mint tea, you're like inhaling the menthol, because that volatile oil, that's one of the reasons for making the hot tea. Now the oil volatilizes off, you breathe it in, and it goes right into your respiratory system and thus right into the blood. And that's why it is able to act so fast. The majority of studies have found that peppermint is exceptionally helpful for people who tend toward diarrhea, and that it is very well tolerated by most people. A cup of warm or hot peppermint tea thins mucus, loosens phlegm, and relieves a stuffy nose. The Food and Drug Administration in the United States approves the use of mint in ointment, lozenges, and as a steam inhalant for people who are dealing with coughs and colds. Have you ever done a steam inhalation of mint?
I have, yes.
Yeah, it's
wonderful.
Fun, isn't it?
It is. It feels just invigorating.
Yeah. So what I usually do is just boil a pot of water, throw some dried mint into it, turn the fire off, put my head in a towel over the pot, and breathe.
Yes.
Is that what you do too?
Well, I usually set it on the counter first, just in case. But
that's very smart.
But yes, it works very well.
It does. It really opens up it just makes you go, ah. And again, not just for coughs and colds and the flu, but think about it if somebody is really like seriously shutting down, if they're dealing with allergies, asthma, and things like that. Of course, we know that there's all kinds of products out there that have menthol and peppermint oil in them, like Bengay and Tiger Balm. So if you have been using those products, which are very heavily laden with essential oils, you could also try taking a step back to more natural therapy and saying, okay, well, if I've, really been finding that Bengay or Tiger Balm eases my sore muscles, what if I just soaked a towel in peppermint infusion and applied that to my sore muscles? What would happen? Well, what people from as far back as 5,000 years are telling us is it's going to relieve your muscle ache. One of the reasons that I really like herbs and herbal medicine is because I feel that it gives us power and it gives us freedom. So long as we are using, even if we're enjoying and benefiting from a product that we have to buy, then, well, let's face it, we're nothing more than a puppet on a string. In order to buy that product, we have to work sometimes at things we don't like to get the money to buy something that works for us. Where when we're using herbal medicine, we don't have to work at something we don't like in order to get money to buy something, because it's something that we need is already right there. It's right outside our door. That's why I say herbal medicine is people's medicine. I thought this was very clever. They said, have a headache, want a compress? Get some peppermint tea bags and put those peppermint tea bags, just let them soak in some hot water for 5 minutes, and then apply the tea bags to your forehead and your temples. And, of course, you can drink the peppermint tea that you made as well. But I thought, oh, no, isn't that easy? Because it's very easy to buy peppermint in tea bags, and that way you don't have to worry about finding a tea towel or anything like that. Maud Greaves has a long, long discussion about menthol and the varieties of different peppermint, the black peppermint and the white peppermint. She says there's very little difference except that the black mint has stems that are purplish brown and the white mint is green. I'm wondering if she is simply making a distinction between peppermint and spearmint here. But it is difficult to say. She certainly does say that the white variety produces the best essential oil, and the black variety does not produce an oil that is commercially found to be as good. Peppermint oil is the first in importance of all essential oils. It is colorless or yellow or green with a very penetrating odor and a burning taste. The oil thickens and becomes red with age, but can be kept as long as 14 or 15 years with no diminishment in its usefulness and its ability to help in all of the ways that we have mentioned that peppermint can be so very helpful for us. How many times do we leave a restaurant and pick up a mint on the way out? That's peppermint oil right there. We're not talking some arcane or strange lure here when we talk about peppermint being used to improve and aid digestion, to improve and aid the functioning of the liver and the gallbladder. We're talking about something that is so well known and so much a part of our culture that we hardly even think about it. And if we do think about it, it's only to look around and say, where is that little bowl of mints that most restaurants have out? I was in an airport a couple of months ago and getting some exercise, walking up and down instead of just sitting there waiting for my plane. And at points throughout the airport, they had big baskets filled with hard mints. And I thought, look at this. Even the airports are getting it, and I put a couple in my pocket because I love to suck on a hard mint candy when the pressure is changing, either going up or going down. Oh, my goodness. Once again, our time is up. I know that I don't have to encourage you to love peppermint. You already do. And we'll be back next week to talk about another herb you love as well. That's basil.
Thank you, Susan. This concludes Part 18 of our 24-part series, Marvelous Mints, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.